Welcome to Mr. Phantom, where fear hides in every shadow and chilling tales come to life. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like this video to get a scary story every night. Tonight, let yourself sink into the silence. Breathe in slowly, and let the weight of the day fall away. You're safe for now. The world outside grows quiet. The rain taps gently on your window. The hum of night wraps around you like a warm blanket. You're alone, or at least you think you are. Close your eyes, let the darkness settle, and prepare your mind for a story that starts softly, but doesn't end that way. A tale of a neighbor whose laughter was just a little too loud, and a secret that never stayed behind locked doors. This is the Laughing Man of Portland, and once you hear him, he's already heard you too. I moved to Portland for a fresh start. New job, new apartment, new life. After what happened back in San Diego, I needed a reset, something low-key, off the grid. Portland seemed like the kind of place that wouldn't ask too many questions, especially in the rain. The city had a reputation for being weird, but I figured a little weirdness was better than the chaos I left behind. My apartment was in an old brownstone-style building tucked between a thrift shop and a Korean barbecue joint in East Portland. The place had character, creaky floors, drafty windows, and a smell like damp wood and forgotten secrets. It wasn't exactly a palace, but rent was dirt cheap, and the landlord didn't seem to care much about anything as long as the check cleared. I was in Unit 4A, second floor, facing the street. The hallway outside my apartment was narrow and dimly lit, with faded green carpet that muffled footsteps just enough to make them sound ghostly. Across from me was Unit 4B. The door was always closed, always locked. No nameplate, just a worn brass number that looked like it had been there since the 70s. I didn't think much of 4B for the first few weeks. I was busy settling into my new routine, figuring out the public transit system, dealing with the insane amount of rain, and trying to survive my 9 to 5 job at a local tech startup. The office was chill, the people were nice in that passive Pacific Northwest way, and the coffee was strong. It was the kind of quiet, structured life I thought I wanted. Then the laughing started. The first time I heard it, I thought I was imagining things. It was around midnight. I had just shut off my laptop and was brushing my teeth when I caught the sound, soft at first, like someone chuckling into their pillow. I paused, toothbrush in hand, and leaned toward the wall. The sound was definitely coming from 4B. At the time, I shrugged it off. People laugh. Maybe he was watching some late-night stand-up. Maybe he had a friend over. I went to bed and forgot about it. But it didn't stop. Night after night, usually sometime between 12:30 and 2 a.m., the laughter would start up again. Not every night, but often enough to become a pattern. At first, it was short bursts, quiet, restrained. Then it grew louder, longer, almost deliberate, like someone trying to be heard. It started to freak me out when I noticed there was no other sound. No TV, no voices, just laughter. Who the hell just laughs in the dark? Alone. Eventually, it became impossible to ignore. I'd lie in bed, eyes open, listening to the rhythm of it. The pitch would rise and fall like waves, sometimes broken by a wheeze, sometimes drawn out like a hyena's cackle. There was something unnatural about it, too controlled to be involuntary, too erratic to be sane. And then there were the footsteps. I heard them one night as I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water. My apartment was dead silent, except for the occasional groan of the building settling. But then, from outside my door, came slow, dragging footsteps, one after another. Long pauses between each step, as if whoever it was didn't want to be heard. but the floor betrayed them. That goddamn green carpet couldn't hide everything. I froze in place, glass of water in hand, and stood in the dark waiting. The steps stopped directly outside my apartment. I held my breath. Then laughter. Low, guttural, right outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. My heart was pounding so loud I thought he'd hear it. I stood like that for what felt like an eternity until the sound finally moved on, fading into the hallway, back toward 4B. The next morning, I checked the peephole. Nothing. Same bland hallway, same closed door across from mine. No evidence of anything strange. I told myself I was overthinking. Lack of sleep, stress from work, residual anxiety from San Diego, it all added up. Maybe the guy in 4B was just a lonely old man. Maybe the laughter was his way of coping. Hell, maybe he was a smoker and it was really just a wheezing cough that sounded weird through the wall. Still, I found myself getting obsessed. I started leaving my phone's voice recorder on at night, just to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. But every morning I checked, the audio was either silent or full of static. Once there was something that sounded like faint breathing, but it cut off before I could verify anything. Then I started asking around. I casually brought up my neighbor to the landlord, pretending I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself. "Oh, for B," he said, scratching his head. "I think he's some retired guy. Keeps to himself. Pays on time. Don't think I've seen him in a while, though." I even tried knocking one afternoon. No answer. I tried again the next day, a little louder. Still nothing. It was like he only existed between midnight and 2 a.m., a creature of the in-between hours. My coworkers started noticing I looked tired. I told them I had noisy neighbors, but didn't go into detail. How could I? Yeah, my neighbor laughs like a maniac in the dark every night. Doesn't exactly earn you a lot of sympathy. Just worried glances. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. Not laughter. Whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent. Hushed. Like someone was having an intense argument just outside my bedroom window. I lived on the second floor. I leapt out of bed and ran to the window. Nothing. The street was empty, just slick pavement and dim streetlights. But when I turned back to the hallway, the laughter had started again. Except this time, it was closer. That was the night I started keeping a baseball bat next to my bed. That was also the night I stopped sleeping more than 3 hours. By now, the man in 4B had become an obsession. I watched his door like a hawk. Every time I walked down the hallway, I'd glance at the crack between the door and the floor, looking for shadows, movement, anything. I even tried leaving my apartment at different times to see if I'd run into him. Nothing. Not once. It was like he only existed when the world slept. But I heard him, night after night, laughing, walking, breathing, whispering. It got to a point where I started questioning reality. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe the solitude was getting to me. I called my sister in California just to hear a familiar voice. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was having trouble adjusting. She told me to get out more, join a group, meet people, stop being so paranoid. But I knew what I heard. I knew what I felt. Something was wrong in 4B. Something deeply, deeply wrong. And eventually, I'd find out just how wrong. But that wouldn't happen until the night I saw inside. And nothing was ever the same after that. I told myself I wouldn't get more involved, that I'd keep my head down, wear earplugs, and focus on work. That lasted 2 nights. On the third, the laughter came back with a vengeance, louder than ever, high-pitched and rhythmic, like it was mocking me, like he knew I was listening. It was 1:42 a.m. I remember that clearly because I had just checked the time on my phone when the laughter started up again, echoing through the wall like he was right behind my headboard. But this time, I heard something new, a sound like shuffling, paper maybe, then a sharp, quick slap, like photos being laid out one after another. I crept out of bed, my heartbeat thudding in my ears, and crouched near the wall that separated our units. I pressed my ear to the cold plaster. The laughter dipped into a whisper, and then rose again like someone losing it completely. There was no doubt now, he wasn't watching TV. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just sat on the couch, baseball bat on my lap, lights on, waiting for sunrise. And as the first rays of morning light bled through the blinds, the laughing stopped, just like it always did, as if it obeyed some kind of rule. At work that day, I couldn't concentrate. I kept playing the sounds in my head over and over. My co-workers were nice enough to pretend they didn't notice the bags under my eyes, or the way I kept jumping whenever someone spoke too loud. I tried to go about my day normally. Grocery shopping, coffee run, a few hours of bad TV. But everything was just filler until the sun set again. Dread settled over me around dusk, crawling under my skin like something alive. I needed to know what was going on in 4B. That night, I stayed up, lights off, perched by the peephole in my door like some kind of stalker. I didn't know what I was hoping for. Movement, a sound from the hallway, a face. At exactly 1:15 a.m., the laughter began. It started with a wheeze, then rolled into that twisted, gasping sound I'd come to associate with nightmares. But this time, it was followed by something even more chilling. Words. He was speaking. I pressed my ear to the door and strained to hear. It wasn't a full conversation, just bits and pieces. Phrases like, "Look at her now. She didn't listen. Still warm when I found her." And then more laughter. I stepped back from the door, hard in my throat. I felt sick. Cold sweat coated my back. This wasn't quirky old guy laughing at friends' reruns. This was something else. Something bad. Something dangerous. I had to see. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was adrenaline or sheer exhaustion, or the need to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. But I grabbed my phone, turned on the voice recorder, and stepped into the hallway. The hallway was silent. Not even the buzz of the overhead lights. Just the distant sound of the laughing man behind 4B's door. I tiptoed closer, holding my breath. The door was shut, as always, but something was different this time. The faintest sliver of light peeked from the gap under the door. It flickered like candlelight, and the door wasn't latched. My fingertips brushed the handle. I hesitated. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to stop. But I had to know. I needed proof that something was off, that I wasn't imagining this madness. I pushed the door open, just a crack. It creaked, loudly. The laughter stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Then I saw him, through the small gap, maybe 3 feet in, sitting in a wooden chair under a hanging bulb that swayed slightly, as if it had just been bumped. He was hunched over a small table covered in dozens, no hundreds of photographs. His back was to me, his head twitching side to side as if he were looking for something, or maybe remembering. I couldn't see the photos clearly, but I saw enough. Bodies, contorted limp, some soaked in something dark. They were real, too real. These weren't horror movie stills or Halloween decorations. These were victims, people. His hand moved across the table, sorting them, tapping one gently. He giggled again, high and soft, like a child whispering a joke to himself. Then, out of nowhere, he slammed both palms down on the table. "Don't you see how beautiful they are?" he said to no one. Or maybe to me. I gasped. His head whipped toward the door, But I didn't wait. I ran, full sprint, down the hallway, around the corner, and into the stairwell. I didn't stop until I hit the street, barefoot and shivering in a thin t-shirt. I called the police from the curb. The dispatcher tried to calm me down. I probably sounded insane, ranting about laughter and photos and someone talking to the dead. But they said they'd send a unit. I waited. When the cruiser finally pulled up, I tried to walk them through everything. Showed them where the door had been cracked open, where I'd seen him. I begged them to go in, to just look at the photos. I even showed them the audio recording from my phone, though by then it was just static. Again, the cops looked at each other. One of them finally said, "Sir, that apartment's been unoccupied for 3 weeks. The guy who lived there moved out. We've been trying to contact the landlord for access." I stared at them like they had 3 heads. "What?" I said. "No. I saw him. Just now. I saw him. I heard him." They didn't believe me. Not really. They agreed to take a look inside, but told me to stay in the hallway. They knocked first. Nothing. Then they used a key one of them had retrieved from the landlord's Dropbox. The door creaked open again. They went in, flashlights raised, and they found nothing. No man, no chair, no table, no photos, just an empty unit. Dust on the floor, cobwebs in the corners. Even the light bulb was missing. I stood in the hallway, feeling the last of my sanity flicker. The officer came back out, gave me a gentle look, and said, "You should get some rest, sir. Probably just a nightmare. Stress. That kind of thing." They left me standing there, barefoot and confused. But I knew what I saw. The laughing man was real. He had been there, and I had looked straight into his world, and maybe, just maybe, he'd looked back. I went back to my apartment that night, trying to convince myself it was over, that I had done the right thing, that the worst was behind me. But the truth? The worst hadn't even started yet. Not until the laughter moved next door. Not until it moved in. The apartment was quiet for a full 24 hours after the cops checked Unit 4B. For the first time in weeks, I didn't hear the laughing. No whispers, no footsteps, no eerie shuffling of unseen papers. It was like the place was holding its breath. I tried to tell myself it was over, that I'd imagined everything, that the lack of sleep had finally tipped me over the edge and conjured up some twisted hallucination of a ghostly neighbor with a laugh like a saw-through bone. But deep down, I knew better. The silence didn't feel like relief. It felt like anticipation. Still, I clung to the hope that maybe the cops had scared him off. Maybe there was someone living in 4B illegally. A squatter. A lunatic. Someone who knew how to sneak in and out without being seen. Maybe he was gone now. Maybe he knew he'd been caught. That hope lasted until the following night. I was in bed by midnight, exhausted from 2 straight days of pretending everything was fine. I'd barely shut my eyes when I heard something faint, something familiar. Not the laughter. Breathing. Heavy. Wet. Like someone with a deep chest infection, standing just inches from my door. I sat up slowly, holding my breath. It was so quiet I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then came the footsteps. Not on the other side of the wall, right outside my apartment door. Slow, deliberate. 1-2 pause. 3 shuffle. I moved silently to the door and peered through the peephole. No one, but I could hear them. Still moving. Still dragging across the floor. I backed away, heart in my throat. I thought about calling the cops again, but what could I even say? They already thought I was unstable. Maybe they were right. Still, I had to know. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app, and recorded a video through the peephole. I held it there for a solid minute. Nothing moved. Nothing sounded. But when I played it back, there was a voice. Just one word, whispered in a voice like wet leaves dragged across pavement. Closer. That night, I didn't sleep. I left the lights on. I sat in my kitchen with the bat in one hand and my phone in the other. The silence pressed against the windows like fog. I didn't even realize I was crying until I felt the tears touch my wrist. At some point, I dozed off. I woke up around 6 a.m. to the sound of my upstairs neighbor vacuuming. The hum of it was weirdly comforting. Normal. Alive. I stood up and shuffled toward the living room window to peek outside, just to prove to myself that the world still existed. And there, across the street, I saw a man. He was just standing there, staring up at my window, motionless, in a gray hoodie, hood pulled tight, hands in his pockets. I couldn't see his face, but I knew it was him, the laughing man. He stood there for maybe a minute. Then he slowly turned, walked to the left, and vanished into the alley. I didn't follow. I didn't move. I just locked every door, checked every window, and sat in the bathroom with the shower running for the next hour, trying not to scream. By that evening, I was on edge. I didn't want to be in the apartment, but I didn't want to leave it either. It felt like if I stepped out, I'd come back and find something waiting for me, something smiling. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I called the landlord. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Just wondering, do you have the forwarding address or info for the guy who used to live in 4B? There was a pause on the line. Then the landlord said, "Didn't I tell you? That unit's been empty since the old tenant passed." I froze. Passed? He died. Yeah, a few weeks before you moved in. Natural causes. I think it was heart failure. Why? I stared at the floor. No reason, I said and hung up, but my blood turned to ice. Heart failure. A few weeks before I moved in. Yet I had seen someone in that apartment just a few nights ago. I had heard him. The laughter. The breathing. The voice. He was dead. He was dead. Then who had I been watching? Who had been watching me? I wanted to leave. I packed a bag. Toothbrush, wallet, charger, some clothes. I was done pretending. Whatever this was, I didn't care anymore. I just wanted out. As I was about to leave, I heard a soft knock. Not on my door. On the wall. The shared wall with 4B. I dropped the bag. Another knock. Louder. Closer to my bed this time. Then the laughter returned. It rolled through the wall like thunder on the ocean, low and rumbling. But there was something off now. It wasn't just laughing. It was speaking between gasps. "You saw me. You shouldn't have looked. Now I see you too." The lights flickered. The room suddenly felt wrong. Like the walls weren't in the same place they had been an hour ago. Like space had tilted just a few degrees. I stumbled back, heart hammering. And then, silence. Complete, utter silence. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes. Frozen. Waiting. Listening. Nothing. I went to the front door, reached for the handle. And that's when I noticed it. My doorknob. It was wet. Not just damp, dripping. Thick, dark liquid. Blackish red. Coating the metal, seeping down the wood. I jerked my hand away, heart slamming against my ribs. I backed away slowly, barely able to breathe. And then, the knob turned. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just a slow, methodical turn, like someone testing it. It didn't open. I had locked it, but it tried. I stumbled back to the kitchen and grabbed my phone, ready to call 911 again. But the screen was dark, unresponsive, dead, even though it had been at 80% 10 minutes ago. The lights in the kitchen flickered again and went out. All that remained was the faint red glow from the clock on the microwave, and even that was fading. I stood there in the dark, listening to the quiet, waiting. After a long while, the power returned. The light bulbs buzzed to life. The clock reset. My phone powered back on with a chirp. I grabbed my bag and left. I checked into a motel off Sandy Boulevard. I didn't care what it cost. I didn't even sleep. I just sat there in bed, curtains drawn, TV playing old reruns to drown out the silence. The next morning, I went back to my apartment just to grab the rest of my stuff. The hallway was empty. No signs of anything. My door was locked, everything untouched. I thought maybe whatever it was, it had passed. I thought wrong. That night, the laughing didn't come from 4B anymore. It came from inside. But that's another story. And if you're smart, you'll stop listening now. I didn't sleep the night I returned from the motel. I didn't even unpack. I just stood in the middle of my living room, breathing slowly, trying not to panic, waiting for that sound again. The laughter. Except this time, it didn't come from next door. Not from the hallway. Not even from above or below. It came from inside the apartment. It started around 2 a.m., as if waiting for me to let my guard down. A quiet chuckle, dry, raspy, and far too close. It wasn't muffled like before. It wasn't coming through the wall. It was in the vents. That first night, I heard it from the air duct in the bathroom. I turned on the light, heart pounding, and walked in slowly. The vent cover was trembling, just slightly, like someone was exhaling through it from the other side. I crouched and listened. And then, you came back. I bolted. I spent the rest of the night sitting on my building's front steps, wrapped in a hoodie, watching the sunrise over the quiet streets of Portland. Joggers passed. A man walked his dog. The world seemed perfectly normal. But inside that apartment, something waited. Something that wasn't supposed to follow me home. And it had. The next few days blurred together. I tried to stay out as much as possible. Coffee shops, the library, wandering the streets downtown. Anywhere but home. But Portland in late October wasn't exactly warm or welcoming. Rain soaked everything. The sun disappeared behind thick, gray skies. And no matter how long I stayed away, I always ended up back at that cursed apartment after dark. The laughter came every night. Sometimes it drifted out of the hallway closet. Sometimes from under the sink. Once it came from inside the fridge. Always the same tone, playful, breathless, wrong. Worse, I began seeing things. First it was small, shadows moving across the floor when nothing was near. The bathroom mirror fogging up with fingerprints, even though I hadn't used the shower. Objects in the apartment shifting slightly from where I left them. But then it escalated. One morning, I woke up to find a Polaroid on my nightstand. A photo I hadn't taken. It showed my bedroom, the exact angle from the foot of my bed. And there I was asleep. In the corner of the photo, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure. Hunched, watching me. I threw the photo away and bought a lock for my bedroom door. Slept with the bat beside me. Set up motion-activated lights. Nothing helped. The next night, 3 more photos appeared. One of the hallway outside my room. One of the bathroom with the mirror cracked slightly. And the third was of my face. Eyes open, looking directly at the camera. Except I had no memory of it being taken. By now, I knew the truth. The laughing man wasn't just some spirit tied to 4B. He wasn't a ghost that haunted a room, or a corridor, or even a building. He was a pattern, a stain that spread, a sound that lived inside the walls, inside your head, like a parasite of fear. And once you noticed him, once you really looked, he noticed you back. You could move. You could run. But he'd follow. He always followed. I tried everything. I even contacted a local paranormal investigator I found through a Reddit thread. The guy, some ex-priest turned psychic consultant, came by with a briefcase full of sage, salt, and silver charms. He stepped into my apartment, walked maybe 5 feet toward the kitchen, then stopped cold. He turned to me slowly, face pale, and said, "You need to leave." "That bad?" He nodded. "It's not the apartment. It's you." I laughed nervously. "Thanks. That helps." "I'm serious," he said. "Something's attached to you, and it's not human. Not anymore." He left without charging me, told me not to call again. I didn't blame him. By Halloween, the laughter never stopped. Day or night, I could hear it, sometimes low and muttering, sometimes wild and echoing through the vents like a carnival of broken voices. I stopped leaving the apartment altogether. Every time I tried, something would pull me back. A noise, a knock, a word whispered from the kitchen faucet. And the photos kept coming. They were everywhere now, pinned to my fridge, taped to the walls, lining the floor like breadcrumbs. Photos of me, sleeping, standing, screaming. Photos of others, too. People I'd never seen before. Women mostly. Men too. All pale. All lifeless. Eyes wide in horror. I recognized one from a local news article. She'd gone missing last year. And there she was in full color, mouth open mid-scream. I didn't know how they got there. But I stopped questioning it. I stopped questioning anything. The night it ended started like all the others. The laughter started around 1:30 a.m., but it was different this time. It was inside the bedroom. I sat upright in bed, heart pounding, staring at the corner of the room. I couldn't see anything, but the laughter was loud, too loud. Then the bulb above my bed burst, glass raining down in tiny shards. And then I saw him. Not a full figure, just a glimpse. A flash of something crawling across the ceiling like a spider. Long limbs, skin stretched thin, a mouth open far too wide, teeth like broken glass, and eyes that shone in the dark. He dropped to the floor and laughed. I froze. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. All I could do was sit there while he crawled closer, dragging his nails across the floor, the sound sharp and unbearable. He stopped just inches from my face. "Now you know," he whispered. "Now you're mine." He touched my forehead with one finger. Then everything went black. I woke up the next morning in bed. The sun was shining. The birds were chirping. And the apartment was normal. No laughter. No photos. No scratches on the wall. No burst light bulbs. Everything was where it should be. I thought maybe it had been a dream. A long, spiraling psychotic break. I got up. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. There was a Polaroid on the top shelf. Just one. It showed me, standing in the hallway, smiling. And behind me, barely visible in the shadows, was you. Yes, you, reading this, smiling back. And behind you, do you hear it? That sound, that small laugh behind the wall. That's how it begins. It always begins with laughter. You've just heard the story of the laughing man of Portland, a quiet whisper in the night, a soft chuckle that never truly fades. Now the world outside is still again. Let that silence soothe you. Let your eyes grow heavy. And if you hear laughter tonight, just remember, it's probably nothing. Probably. Thank you for spending your night with Mr. Phantom. If the story kept you awake or sent chills down your spine, let us know in the comments below. What would you do if the laughter came from inside your home? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a midnight tale. Until next time, sleep tight. And remember, Some fears don't knock, they laugh. Moving to Savannah felt like the right thing to do. I needed distance from people, from noise, from the constant buzz of the city that never let me sleep. A friend of a friend had mentioned an old rental house in the historic district. Cheap, quiet, full of character. That's how they phrased it. The kind of place that looked like it belonged in a vintage postcard, complete with ivy crawling up cracked brick walls and trees draped in Spanish moss like ghosts stretching out their limbs. I didn't ask too many questions. I just packed my things and left Atlanta behind. The house sat on a corner, half shadowed by oaks and centuries of forgotten stories. 2 floors, tall windows, creaky porch steps, and a wrought iron fence that groaned when I opened it. It wasn't just old. It felt aged, like it remembered things I didn't know yet. Still, for $600 a month, I figured I could live with a few haunted floorboards. The inside was mostly bare when I moved in, except for some dusty furniture that had clearly been there forever. A heavy wooden dresser with a cracked mirror. An armchair that looked like it might eat me if I sat in it too long. The bedroom was upstairs, facing the street, with a tall window that looked out onto the neighbor's house. From the second I stepped into that room, I felt watched. Not in a paranoid way, just that prickling at the back of your neck when you know someone's eyes are on you. And that's where she comes in, my neighbor. The day I moved in, I saw her watching me from the house next door. She sat in a rocking chair on her porch, a wide-brimmed hat over her silver hair, her skin wrinkled and soft like old paper. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just stared at me, or rather, at the window behind me. I tried to play it cool, gave her a small nod. She didn't return it, just kept rocking, her eyes never leaving that one window. That night, I unpacked my essentials, laptop, clothes, some books, and crashed hard. I was exhausted, but something woke me up around 3 in the morning. Not a sound, not even a nightmare, just a presence. That room was freezing, the kind of cold that isn't just in the air, but under your skin. I pulled the blanket up and stared at the window. The curtains were drawn, but I swear I saw a shadow moving on the other side. I told myself it was just a tree. Trees move, right? The next morning, I went outside to get some air. She was there again. Same rocking chair. Same hat. Same eyes on my window. I figured I'd be neighborly. "Morning," I said, sipping my coffee. She didn't answer right away. Just kept staring. Then, almost like she had to force herself to speak, she said, "You shouldn't open your curtain at night." I blinked. "Sorry." She turned her eyes on me then, and I wish she hadn't. They were this pale, glassy blue that didn't look like they saw you so much as through you. "Don't open it. Doesn't matter what you hear or see. Just don't. Especially not after midnight." I tried to chuckle, lighten the mood. "Well, that's not ominous at all." She didn't laugh. Just stood up and went inside, the screen door slamming behind her. Weird, but it's the South. People have their superstitions, right? I'd seen enough ghost tours advertised around town to know Savannah liked to play up the whole haunted history thing. Still, that night I double-checked the curtains, made sure they were shut tight. The next few days followed a strange pattern. I'd wake up at random hours, 2:12 a.m., 3:33 a.m., 12:59 a.m., always just before the hour, always from a deep, dreamless sleep, and always with that feeling, cold and watched. And every time I peeked out in the morning, there she was, sitting, rocking, staring. The weirdest part was, she never looked at me when I was outside, only at the window. I even tried to sneak a glance through the curtain one night to see if she was still out there. But she wasn't. What I did see, though, was a faint reflection of myself in the window glass, even though the lights were off behind me. Just standing there, unmoving. I told myself it was my imagination, that the glass was catching some light from the street or the moon. I made up 100 rational explanations, and I tried not to think about the whisper I thought I heard just as I let go of the curtain. It said my name, whispered, soft, almost like breath against my ear. That morning, I went next door. I had enough. I knocked on her door, and it took a while before she answered. Her house smelled like old fabric and something sweet, flowers maybe, or rotting fruit. She didn't invite me in, just stared at me from behind the screen door. "I didn't mean to bother you," I said, "but I wanted to ask about what you said." "The curtain." Her expression didn't change. "It's not the curtain. It's what's behind it." I tried to keep my voice steady. "What is behind it?" She looked past me, right at the window of my room. "Something that wants to wear you." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. "Are you saying there's some kind of ghost in my house?" She didn't blink. "Not in your house. Outside, waiting. It watches from the street. Watches for someone curious. Someone who opens the curtain. Someone who looks." I wanted to ask more, but she just closed the door. Just like that. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept dreaming of eyes, too many eyes, all blinking at once, none of them mine. The curtains stayed closed, but I kept feeling the urge to pull them back. Just for a second, just to see. That's how it starts, doesn't it? The obsession. The knowing someone warned you not to do something, and now it's all you can think about. My curiosity gnawed at me. Every whisper of wind outside sounded like a footstep. Every creak in the hallway felt like something moving closer. And she, Mrs. Carraway, started doing something new. Every night, right before midnight, I'd hear her voice. From outside. "Don't," she'd call. Not loud, not screaming, just one word, sharp and clear. "Don't." The thing is, I never told her I'd been thinking about opening the curtain. But somehow she knew. And by the time that week ended, I'd made up my mind. I was going to open it. Just once. Just to see. Because if I didn't, I'd never be able to sleep again. I didn't open the curtain that night. Not yet. Even though every nerve in my body was practically itching to do it, something about Mrs. Carraway's voice stayed with me. The way she said "don't," like it wasn't a warning, it was a plea. And I didn't know why, but a small part of me didn't want to disappoint her. I figured maybe if I just waited, the urge would pass. Maybe it was just the isolation messing with my head. But then came the sounds. At first, I thought it was just the old house settling, creaks, groans, the way wind whips through loose windows. I told myself houses make noise, especially ones this old. But these weren't normal house sounds. These were deliberate, rhythmic, too human. The first time I heard it, I was lying in bed around 1:30 a.m., wide awake and staring at the ceiling when I heard footsteps. Not from inside the house. Outside, in the yard, right under my bedroom window. Slow, crunching across the gravel path, one step at a time. I froze. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just listened. Then it stopped, right beneath the window, and something tapped the glass. Just once. Tap. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. I waited for another sound, another step, anything, but it was dead silent. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, staring at the drawn curtain, waiting for something to move on the other side. Eventually, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. That became the new pattern. Almost every night after that, something would walk around the outside of the house. Sometimes it was one step. sometimes a few. Sometimes it would circle the whole house, like it was testing the walls, looking for a way in. It never knocked. It never rattled the doors. But always, it stopped under my bedroom window. And then came the whispers. They started soft, like the wind pushing words through the cracks in the wood. At first, I couldn't even make them out. Just shhhhhh, like static, like secrets. But over time, they grew clearer. The whispers said my name, and not just once, over and over. Liam, Liam, Liam. The voice wasn't familiar. It didn't sound like a man or a woman. It didn't sound right. There was something wrong in the tone, like it had too many mouths, like it was trying to mimic a voice and failing. Sometimes it would laugh after it said my name, a dry, wheezing sound, like someone who hadn't breathed in years. I tried to record it on my phone one night. I left the voice memo app open, hit record, and waited. I didn't hear anything while I was recording, but the next morning, when I played it back, there was static. And underneath the static, barely audible, a low voice whispering something. It wasn't my name. It said, "Let me wear you." That was when I knew it wasn't just in my head. I tried talking to people about it. I called my friend back in Atlanta, the one who told me about the rental. I asked her if she knew anything about the house. She said no, it belonged to some old estate, handled by a third-party company. Dirt cheap because no one ever stayed longer than a few months. Figures. I called the rental agency, asked if there had been any incidents. They got real tight-lipped, told me they couldn't share that kind of information, which of course only made me more paranoid. So I turned back to Mrs. Carraway. One afternoon, I waited until I saw her outside and walked over, trying to keep my voice casual even though I was basically vibrating with tension. "Hi, Mrs. Carraway. Can I ask you something?" She didn't look at me at first. She was watching the street, as if expecting something or someone to arrive. "It's been outside my window," I said, lowering my voice. "I hear it at night, walking around the yard, whispering." That got her attention. Her head turned sharply, and for a moment, she just stared at me like she was deciding something. Then she said, "Did you open the curtain?" "No," I said. "Not yet." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she nodded once. "Good. What is it?" She didn't answer right away. She took a slow breath, then looked back at her own house. "Something old. It's not a ghost. Not in the way people talk about them. It's a thing that copies. A shadow. It waits for you to acknowledge it." I frowned. "Acknowledge it?" She turned her gaze on me again. "Once you open the curtain, you see it. But that's not the dangerous part. The danger comes when it sees you seeing it." That made my skin crawl. "Has this happened before?" Her lips pressed into a tight line. "Yes." She didn't elaborate. I could tell she was debating whether to say more. "When I was a girl," she finally said, "there was a boy who lived where you live now. 17. Curious. Heard the stories. He opened the curtain one night. Said he saw someone standing in the yard. Thought it was a prank. Next morning, he was gone. No sign of a break-in. No note. Parents thought he ran off. But you don't think that," I said. "I know better," she said simply. The sun was going down behind us, painting the street in long gold shadows. I noticed she kept glancing at the sky, like she was watching the clock. "I leave the light on outside for a reason," she said. "I sit here so it knows I'm watching. But I'm not strong enough to keep it out forever. Only you can do that." That night, I tried not to fall asleep. I left the hallway light on. I even stacked furniture in front of the window, just in case. But it didn't help. At exactly 12:47 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. this time louder, more confident, like it knew I was awake. And then came the knock. Tap, tap, twice, slow and soft. Then the whisper, so close it felt like it was inside the walls. "Liam, come see me." I sat up, covered in sweat. My body wanted to move, to get out of bed, to pull back the curtain just a little, just enough to peek. I gripped the mattress so hard my knuckles went white. And then, through the thin glass of the window, I heard something that chilled me to the bone. It was my voice. Might as well look. I'd want to know if I were you. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Because I wasn't the one talking. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I was frozen. Not from fear, but from something worse, the knowledge. The sudden realization that I had crossed some invisible line, that I had done something far more dangerous than I even knew. That knock on the window, that whisper, my voice saying, "Might as well look." It wasn't just the thing outside trying to lure me. It was me, or at least it felt like me. But at the same time, it wasn't. The voice wasn't mine, not exactly. It was like hearing my own words from a distance, twisted, warped, coming from somewhere I couldn't reach. It was a reminder, a lure, and yet a warning, all wrapped up in one. I kept staring at the curtain, terrified of what would happen if I let myself pull it back, just a little. What if I didn't see my own reflection in the glass? What if it wasn't my face out there, looking in? What if it was the thing that had been walking around my yard at night, waiting for me to look? I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, like I was drowning in the air. The clock on my nightstand blinked 1:32 a.m., and the noises started again. The familiar creaks, the soft whispers, the scraping sound outside the window, like something was dragging its fingers along the wood. And then a voice, but not mine this time, a guttural, almost choking whisper. "Look." I shot up, my heart slamming against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to run out of the house, but I couldn't. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe properly. Something was pulling me back to the window, to that dark, impenetrable night outside. "Look, Liam." The whispers grew louder, more insistent. There was no denying it anymore. I had to do it. I had to open the curtain. Just a little. I had to know what was out there. I swung my legs over the bed, barely able to feel the floor beneath me. My feet were like lead as I stumbled to the window, every fiber of my being screaming to turn away, to forget this madness. But I couldn't. Not anymore. As I stood there, I felt a weight on my chest, a deep, suffocating pressure that made it hard to breathe. The whispers were so loud now, so close, that they were almost physical, brushing against my skin, sliding into my thoughts. I reached out for the curtain, my hand shaking violently. For a moment, I just gripped it, unable to move any further. The sound of my pulse in my ears was so loud, so deafening, that I didn't hear the footsteps outside. I didn't see the shadow move in front of the window until it was too late. In one swift motion, I pulled the curtain back, a crack just wide enough for my eyes to see the yard below. The moon was high, casting silver light across the gravel, the grass, the shadows stretching long across the lawn. I almost wanted to laugh. There was nothing there. Nothing except the quiet stillness of the night, the trees swaying slightly in the breeze, the soft rustling of leaves. I looked at the grass, the old oak tree out front, the empty porch steps. For a split second, I thought maybe I had overreacted. Maybe it was all in my head. And then I saw it. It was standing just outside the yard, in the shadows of the trees. I couldn't make out details, couldn't see its face, but I didn't need to. I didn't want to. It was tall, way too tall. Its limbs were thin, too thin, stretched and unnatural. It was too still, as if it were waiting. And its head, God, its head was tilted at an impossible angle, twisted unnaturally to the side. It stared at me, or at least I felt like it was staring at me, even though I couldn't see any eyes. I couldn't see anything except darkness where its face should have been, just a black void. And yet I felt it. I felt those eyes on me, boring through me, like they could see right inside. The whispers came again, but this time they were louder, more frantic, more urgent. Come closer. The thing in the yard didn't move. It just waited. And in the stillness of that moment, I knew that it was waiting for me to make the next move. I could feel it. In my bones, in my skin, in every inch of my being, I felt the hunger in the air. I wasn't even aware of what I was doing at first. My hands moved, almost of their own accord, and before I knew it, I was stepping back from the window. My heart was pounding in my chest, my thoughts a blur, but the one thing that I knew for sure was that I needed to close that curtain. I needed to shut it out. But as my hand reached for the fabric, something stopped me. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't the whispers or the thing outside. It was something else, something deep inside my mind, clawing at my thoughts, telling me not to look, not to close it, to leave it open, to see more. It was a force that made no sense, but was so strong that I almost couldn't resist. I stood frozen there for what felt like hours, my hand inches from the curtain. My breath was shallow. My thoughts raced, but I couldn't make sense of them. Everything was too loud, too overwhelming, like I was being pulled in multiple directions at once. And then I heard a sound, not from outside, but from within the house. A quiet click, a soft noise like a door opening. It was the door to my bedroom. I spun around, panic rising in my throat. The door to my room was standing wide open. I didn't open it. I was sure of it. I'd locked it before going to bed. My eyes darted back to the window. The thing was still there, standing motionless, waiting. But now there was a second shape, a shadow at the edge of the yard, close to the door. It was moving closer, creeping toward the house. A shadow that moved as if it had a mind of its own, as if it were waiting for me to open the door. The weight on my chest intensified. I felt dizzy, like the world around me was spinning out of control, and my mind was spiraling with it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was move away from that door. I turned back to the curtain, but the thing outside was closer now, so much closer, its form taking shape, its limbs stretching toward the window. I knew it was coming for me, knew it wouldn't stop until I gave in, until I let it in. But I had one final choice. I slammed the curtain shut, stumbling backward, falling onto the floor. My heart raced as I tried to regain my breath, my senses. It was still there. I knew it was just outside the window, but at least I couldn't see it anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, I heard the world fall silent. No whispers, no footsteps, no knocks, just silence. I stayed on the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, my body trembling uncontrollably. I didn't know how much time had passed. All I knew was that I had barely escaped whatever it was that had been waiting for me. But then a thought crossed my mind. I hadn't heard it leave. And it wasn't just outside. It was inside too. I didn't move for what felt like hours. My body was frozen, my muscles stiff and aching from staying so still, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know what had happened, what was still happening, but I couldn't keep ignoring it. My heart was hammering in my chest, but the silence had returned, as thick and suffocating as the air in the room. The longer I stayed still, the more I could feel it. Something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong. I could feel its presence in the air. It was heavy, pressing down on me from every direction. It wasn't just outside anymore. It wasn't just at the window. It was inside the house. At first, I thought maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me, spinning out of control from the fear. But then I heard it. The sound of something dragging across the floor, slow and deliberate, scraping like nails against wood. It came from behind me. I froze, my body stiffening. I didn't dare turn around, didn't dare look. If I didn't see it, maybe it wasn't really there. Maybe I could still escape. But the sound came again, closer now, and then a low whisper, one that crawled under my skin. Liam. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, like someone was right behind me, just out of sight. But when I dared to glance, there was nothing. Nothing except the mirror. I hadn't thought about it until that moment, the tall, heavy mirror that stood in the corner of the room. It was the only piece of furniture I hadn't moved. The reflection it held was just as empty as the room itself, but something about the mirror made my skin crawl. I had avoided looking into it as much as possible. It was too old, too warped. It didn't just show you your reflection, it stared back at you. There was something about the way it bent the light that made you feel like it was more than just a piece of glass. But now, I couldn't avoid it anymore. The mirror was pulling me in, like it had become a magnet, drawing me closer with a force I couldn't fight. I slowly, carefully, pushed myself off the floor and stood up. My legs felt like jelly beneath me, my knees shaking with every step as I took a hesitant step toward the mirror. The whispers in the room grew louder, as if they were coming from the reflection itself, just out of reach. The closer I got to it, the more I felt that same weight, that same suffocating pressure. And then I saw it. At first, I thought it was my imagination. The reflection of the room was almost normal, almost exactly the same as what I was seeing with my eyes. But it wasn't. Something was wrong. The mirror didn't reflect the room the way it should have. I could see the light from the window, the shadows on the floor, but there was something in the reflection that didn't make sense. It was distorted. The angle was wrong. The shadows were too long, the air too still. But the worst part, there was someone standing there. Or at least, someone who looked like me. The reflection was a perfect copy of myself. Down to the shirt I was wearing, the way my hair was falling over my forehead. But the eyes were different. In the reflection, my eyes were hollow, completely black. The darkness in them stretched deep, like there was no end to it, no light. It wasn't me staring back from the mirror. It was something else, something that had taken my place. I felt my stomach turn, nausea rising in my throat. The reflection smiled. A smile that wasn't mine. It was a grin that spread wide, too wide, stretching the face in ways that were physically impossible, like the skin itself was being pulled apart. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't respond. I was rooted to the spot, unable to move as the figure in the mirror, myself, lifted a hand. Not in greeting, not in a wave, but in something else. A slow, deliberate motion. The reflection raised its hand, and then it touched the glass. I could feel it, feel the coldness of the glass against my own skin, but the pressure, the warmth, it was different. It was real. The mirror was pulling me in, and I couldn't fight it anymore. I reached out, my fingers trembling as they hovered just inches from the cold surface of the glass. "Liam," the figure in the mirror whispered, its voice a perfect mockery of my own. "You don't need to be afraid." My reflection grinned wider, and I saw the blackness in its eyes spread further, consuming its face. It was no longer me. It was something else, something that wore my skin, my face, my body. Something that had been waiting for me to open the curtain, waiting for me to look. "I've been waiting for you to let me in," the reflection said, its voice a low, rasping sound, like it was trying to speak through a mouth full of dirt. I couldn't tear my eyes away. I was trapped. I had to move, I had to break free, but my body refused to obey. I could feel the thing, myself, reaching out from the mirror, its hand pressing against the glass, and I could feel the glass bending, warping under the pressure, as if the very fabric of reality was stretching thin. And then it spoke again, its voice now a terrible, hollow echo. "You opened the curtain, Liam. You saw me. Now I'm inside." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and everything inside me screamed to run, to get away, to escape. But it was too late. With a sickening crack, the mirror shattered. But not the way I expected. Instead of breaking into shards, the glass seemed to bend and fold, like it was made of something far more fluid. The reflection stepped out of the mirror, crawling out like some twisted version of myself, the glass warping and folding around it, until it was standing right in front of me. Its eyes were gone, replaced by empty, black voids, and its smile, wide and unnaturally stretched, was the last thing I saw before everything went dark. I don't know how long I was unconscious. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. But when I woke up, I was no longer in the room. I was outside, in the yard. The moonlight cast long shadows across the grass, and I could hear the wind rustling the leaves, but there was something strange about it. The air smelled wrong, like dust and decay, like the earth itself had turned sour. And I wasn't alone. I turned my head, and there it was, the thing that had taken my place, standing just beyond the porch, waiting. It looked exactly like me. But it wasn't. It wasn't me. It was wearing my skin. And now it was watching me. After this intense journey, it's time for us to take a deep breath, release all the tension, and return to the comfort we've been longing for. Tonight, let all the experiences we've shared drift away like the evening breeze, bringing with it peace and calm. The world outside may be full of mysteries, but here, right now, you are safe. There are no shadows lurking, no whispers in the dark. All you need to do now is close your eyes, embrace the silence of the night, and feel the comfort in every breath you take. Before you drift off, how do you feel? Did this story leave you uneasy, or did it remind you to appreciate the calm when night falls? What if we could share more stories like this together? I'd love to know your thoughts. Feel free to leave a comment about this story or any mysterious experiences you've had. Who knows, maybe we'll share even more tales on nights like this. Sleep well, let sweet dreams come your way. Everything unsettling is behind us now. Good night, and I'll see you again in the next story.